Ms. Shamila Tagore, Mr. Abik Saka, thank you very much for the kind introduction and for the kind invitation to have the honour of delivering the second Tiger Pataudi lecture. Judith and I are delighted to be back in India. We have a special affection for the country and a special affection for the people. We had a wonderful 3.5 years in India, including 2 years with the Indian team. There were some wonderful moments, there were some great challenges. There were days when I wondered whether it was all worthwhile, particularly when the effigy wallahs were doing their work from daylight to dusk. I actually thought of a business opportunity at that time. I thought of producing some miniature effigies so that people could have them, and when the mood took them, they could burn them at their leisure. I thought maybe $1 each, I could retire a rich man. Fate meant that I didn't play cricket with Tiger Pataudi. I got close on a number of occasions. 1966, when India toured Australia, I was representing South Australia and played in the tour match. Unfortunately, Tiger didn't play in that game. He was carrying an injury that he actually took into the next Test match at the Melbourne Cricket Ground. I watched that Test match and saw two of the most amazing innings that I think I witnessed in Test cricket. 75 in the first innings and 85 in the second innings, carrying an injured leg and with one eye playing against some very good fast bowlers. Two shots come to mind from that Test match, one from the bowling of David Renneberg and the other from the bowling of Graham McKenzie. They were certainly inspirational innings. They were played with great skill and flair and, of course, a great deal of courage. I next met Tiger in 1968 when I was playing county cricket in England for Somerset. I was injured at the time, which was fortunate for me because I got to see the last Test match of the Australia-England series that year, in which my older brother Ian was playing. I went up to the Oval to watch the Test match, and on that occasion, along with Richie Benaud, Tiger Pataudi came into the tent at the end of the day, and I had an opportunity to really meet him and to talk cricket with him for the first time. And I was very impressed with his wit and his ability to read the game. And he was the one, in fact, that predicted that England would win that Test match. At the time he made that comment, it was a very even game, but in fact England did go on to win that Test match. I met Tiger and Shamila a few years or many years later in Adelaide when they came to visit their friend Ian McLaughlin when I was working with South Australian cricket. And it wasn't until 2005-2006 that I got to meet Tiger again in New Delhi during a Test series being held in Delhi at the time. And we had a wonderful evening, and I had the opportunity to spend quite a bit of time talking with Tiger about cricket, particularly Indian cricket. You would think with our backgrounds that we didn't have very much in common. The prince on the one hand and the pauper on the other hand. But cricket was what we had in common. And a lot more than I actually realised at the time. My brother had played cricket with Tiger. My grandfather had played cricket with his father. In fact, my grandfather played in the Test match in Nawab Senior's debut Test match at the Sydney Cricket Ground in the Bodyline series in 1932. And they shared some similar beliefs. They both disagreed with the tactics that Douglas Jardine used in that series. Tiger and I talked that night about Indian cricket and where we thought it should be, where it was and where we thought it should be and where we thought it could be. In fact, we talked about unleashing the blue tiger. That India in cricket could be as Brazil in soccer. And who could imagine a soccer World Cup without Brazil? And I don't think any of us could think of a cricket World Cup of any format without India. And of course, we talked about Tendulkar being the Pele of India and Indian cricket. The areas on which we agreed, and Tiger was very supportive with what I was trying to do with Indian cricket at the time, and we talked about the fact that to be successful, excellence in fact is never an accident. It's a choice, or it's choice and not chance that determines your destiny. And the feeling that I had, and with which Tiger agreed, was that for India to become the champion cricket nation, and we both felt that it should be the next cricket superpower, that it should be the country that would dominate cricket for a long period of time. But for that to happen, some things needed to change. You don't get long-term success with ad hoc strategies. It needs a plan, and that plan is many-layered. And cricket, or India, to be successful on the international stage over the long term, needed to be able to win away from India as well as at home. And we talked about what made up a successful team. And as Bishan Bedi said in the film that we just saw, Tiger was the first Indian captain that really made the players think about India. He was the first one that had a plan. He went with the spinners, he went with the strength of spin bowling because that was what he had at his disposal. And he also knew that for India to succeed, they had to have some belief and they had to attack. He had some spectacular successes and he had some spectacular failures. But he was the first one that encouraged India to start thinking positively about themselves. So we agreed that that plan had to include developing great fast bowlers. And we didn't believe what most people were telling me, that India couldn't produce fast bowlers. He said, have a look at across the border. Pakistan produces many great fast bowlers. We can't be that different that we can't produce fast bowlers. But his feeling was that domestic cricket was where it had to start, that this plan had to be a long-term plan. And it had to start firstly with the standard of cricket at the domestic level, the standard of pitches at the domestic level that was going to encourage the production of the types of cricketers that successful teams had produced. And every team that has dominated at the international level for any length of time has had good fast bowling. In fact, very good fast bowling. So the standard of pitches had to be improved to encourage the development of spin bowling along with good spin bowling. It had to encourage batsmen with flair and skill who were prepared to take the game on. We also agreed that whilst the Ranji Trophy was a fabulous base for domestic cricket, that really the Duleep Trophy was the one that had to be bolstered. The teams, again, that had dominated world cricket in recent times, South Africa, West Indies and Australia, interestingly enough, they all had 6 teams in their top domestic competition. And despite the fact that the Indian population is much bigger than all of those countries put together, we both agreed that the best talent had to be brought together in as small a pool as possible to be able to encourage the best ones to reach their full potential. Selection is another part of the process that is very important. identifying the best young players, giving them the opportunities to develop their talents to the fullest, and then encouraging them and supporting them through the periods when obviously they would struggle. But the best players needed to be encouraged and supported. In recent times, India has certainly become the powerhouse of cricket off the field. And with that, the development of state-of-the-art stadia has taken place, and that is very important. But the next step that is equally important is to provide facilities for everybody to be able to play cricket. It is environments rather than academies that produce great players. If you look at the current Indian captain and his performance in the last Test match, I mean, the skill that was on display in that innings was awesome. I was fortunate to work with Dhoni when he was first introduced to international cricket, and I was amazed at his ability to hit balls into areas that others couldn't even conceive of hitting balls. And he developed that talent from playing his cricket on a variety of surfaces. He played on broken ground, he played rarely on perfect turf pitches as a young cricketer. He played tennis ball cricket, and he developed unique skills. I remember the first time I saw him bat was at a training camp in Bangalore back in 2005, and I was watching him bat. I was intrigued about his grip, which is quite unique and very much bottom hand dominant, and I just wondered how he could survive against some of the best bowlers. And I watched him batting on this practice wicket that was slow and low. He was very comfortable on the front foot. And Ajit Agarkar was bowling, and Ajit is quite quick, surprisingly fast, and has a very good bouncer. So I suggested to him, maybe try Dhoni out with a bouncer. And Ajit bowled him nearly the perfect bouncer, going virtually straight at his head. And the blink of an eye, Dhoni swiveled on this ball, and the crack of the ball on the bat was only matched by the crack of the ball hitting the fascia of the grandstand about 5 stories above his head. It was a remarkable performance, and I suggested to Ajit that maybe it was a fluke. Give him another one. He hit the next one a little bit harder and a little bit further. A little bit later, some months later, we had another training camp in Bangalore, and Dhoni, we were in had a one-day series coming up, and we were practicing improving our run chasing. It was one area that we felt needed some improvement, and we were doing some scenarios, playing some 10-over scenarios, and we'd had a couple of sessions before lunch. We had a break, and we debriefed and talked about what we'd learnt from those sessions, and then we went back out after lunch. And I remember Dhoni and Gautam Gambhir were the two that were batting, and the scenario was 20 to 30 over mark against an older ball and the spinners bowling, and again this wicket that had been prepared for the camp was very slow and low. The ball wasn't bouncing and was very difficult to force the pace. And I said to Dhoni, what do you think is a fair target in these conditions? Make it challenging, don't make it too easy. And he said 84. And this is before 20-over cricket. 8.5 runs and over I thought was fairly challenging, and I thought he'd given himself a reasonable challenge, and I was very interested to see how successful they would be. Dhoni took strike. The first ball he played for a single. Gambhir played the next 5 balls as dot balls, so 1 off the first over. Dhoni took a single off the first ball of the second over, and Gambhir played 5 dot balls to end the second over. I was thinking to myself that the target now was very challenging, and I said to Dhoni as I walked away, I was umpiring in this scenario and I was walking away to square leg, and I said to Dhoni, MS, what do you think of your target now? And without a blink he said to me, if I get some help from the other end, we'll get them. And he did. He got them with 4 balls to spare, and I've never seen as many balls hit into unusual places with such power by anyone before or since. That skill cannot be taught. That skill is learnt, and that's why I say environments, not academies, are what makes great players. And taking the Brazil analogy a little bit further, I was reading some years ago about Brazilian soccer and how they felt that they'd won a couple of World Cups, and they thought they'd done this with no education of the players. Basically, the players had grown up playing their football in their villages and their townships, and Brazilian soccer had got to the top just by natural talent. So they felt that if they built some academies, that their soccer would get even better. And what they found was that their soccer went backwards. In fact, they didn't play in the next 2 World Cups. And what they found was that the players were fitter and they were stronger. They had better nutrition. They dribbled the ball well, they passed the ball well, but their strategy and their tactics were lacking. And what they realised was that they needed to get back to their roots. So they gave away their academies and they provided environments for the players in all the villages and the towns around the country so that every young boy could have access to soccer. They made the grounds or the areas smaller. They used a ball that was smaller and heavier, and they played on dirt, sand, because this was where their footballers developed their great skills. In these smaller environments with greater pressure, the players learnt these fantastic skills that has taken Brazilian soccer back to the top. Indian cricket can do that. Indian cricket should have the best 5 teams in the world, with the natural environments and the natural advantages that you have with the population. And the reason that that is not happening is because the plans haven't been put in place for that to happen. I've read in recent times that the BCCI has put together again the pitch committee under Daljit Singh, who I think is one of the most talented groundsmen in the world. The pitches that he produces at Mohali are as good as anywhere in the world. They're great cricket wickets that produce good fast bowling, the ball that bounces, the batsman can play shots all around the wicket, where top spinners can perform, top fast bowlers can perform, and batsmen can perform. Now, you don't want every pitch in the country to be exactly the same. You want each region to have their own nuances. And I think looking back on my early days in Australian cricket and the strength of Australian cricket through its history is that each of our states have pitches that are different, slightly different. Brisbane and Perth tend to have fast, bouncy wickets. Sydney tends to spin. Adelaide and Melbourne tend to be a little bit more batsman friendly, but as the game goes on and the pitch begins to wear, the ball starts to go up and down and the challenges change as the test match go on. That is where you develop players that can play under all types of conditions all around the world. And I think once India embraces this, Indian cricket embraces this, there'll be no stopping what Indian cricket can achieve. I think the future for Indian cricket is very strong. I'm excited about where Indian cricket can go. I'm excited about where I hope Indian cricket can lead the game. Because the players and the administrators are just custodians of the game for future generations. And I think it's really important that each generation passes on something better than the previous generation. The one thing that does worry me somewhat, and again in the last conversation I had with Tiger, we talked about the importance of Test cricket, that Test cricket was the soul of the game, and that Test cricket had to be protected. Well, since then, 2020 cricket has come into its own and has really taken the game in a different direction. I grew up with just the one format, playing test matches in the backyard with my brothers, and all we thought about was Test cricket. The modern players have to be more adaptable and more flexible than any generation before them to be able to play the different formats. And each one of them has its own challenges. But I think Test cricket is something that needs to be preserved and really needs to be cared for. And I think a lot of thought has to go into how we protect Test cricket, because 2020 cricket is here to stay. There's no doubt about that. We're not going to change that, and nor should we try and change that. But I think we have to take care of the three formats if they're going to survive. I know some people are saying that now 2020 cricket has come in, that the 50-over game is superfluous and should be scrapped. I'm not so sure about that, because the fear I have about Test cricket is that there are the countries, the haves and the have-nots. And there's 4 or 5 countries who can afford the development programs, the domestic cricket, to produce players that can be successful and competitive at the Test cricket level. But some countries are struggling, and some countries that have been great Test playing nations, like the West Indies for instance, are really struggling to be able to put the investment into the game to be able to develop the types of players that are going to allow them to be successful at Test cricket in the future. And if we allow that to happen, if we allow that to continue, it won't be long before there are only 4 or 5 countries who can really play Test cricket. And I think that would be a shame. And therefore 50-over cricket is important, because for some countries that may be their Test cricket in the future. And if we let it just become 2020 cricket and Test cricket, then I think we may make a big mistake that for the long term of the game will be detrimental. I've been very fortunate. One of the few reasons I suppose that I can see any positives out of having lived into my 60s is that I've seen a lot, and I've learnt a lot along the journey. And I was lucky enough to play a number of sports, but cricket was always the number one sport for me. And Test cricket in particular, because of the challenges that it presented. And I think most of the life lessons that I've learned have come from Test cricket. Learning the patience, learning the discipline, learning to take the good with the bad. As I said to someone yesterday, cricket is a game of dealing with failures. Don Bradman batted 80 times in Test cricket and he only made 2900s. So in effect, he failed 51 times. When you think that he's twice as good as the next best, the rest of us have had to deal with a lot of failure. But those lessons have stood me in good stead in other aspects of my life. And I would like to think and hope that the cricketers of the future have the opportunity and have the same feeling and the same love for Test cricket as those of us who played in previous eras. The concern for me is that if we denigrate and allow Test cricket to slip away, cricket will lose its soul. And if we do that, then cricket will be the poorer. Thank you for the invitation to be here this evening and to share in the second Tiger Pataudi Memorial Lecture. Tiger was a great cricketer, a great man, and somebody who's left a legacy that is a wonderful legacy for his family and for the game of cricket. I look forward to these lectures continuing for many years to come. Thank you.